sports fans, and welcome to the first Darkrooms Blood Bowl League. I'm your host, Kratos, God of War.
And I am also getting paid to provide cursory analysis of this piece of shit game. Hi, my name is Rick Sanchez, and I'm a fucking genius.
So, Rick, how are you feeling about this year's new league? There are some interesting teams going into this first season.
Look, Kratos, buddy, I know you need the money and all, what with your franchise going the way of the dodo and everything, but let's cut the small talk and just do this, okay?
Very well. Let's take a look at the highlights for the first round of the competition. First up, we have the Crypt Rattlers, an unusual undead team.
Unusual in comparison to the usual collection of walking, necrotizing corpses and supernatural being of folklore? Sure. It's a little weird to see so many skeletons kicking footballs, I guess.
And their opponents were the ferocious green-skinned orcs of Orkplosion, a typical yet formidable team of linemen, blitzers, and black orcs.
I don't know why you'd focus on their skin color so much, but hey, that's your problem, not mine.
This was a match I think everyone expected the orcs to blitz through to victory, given their propensity for violence.
There you go with the racial stereotyping again. Anyway, the Rattlers really threw themselves into this one with only a single touchdown in the orcs' favor.
Yes, and in a somewhat surprising turn of events, the orc scorer Raphael managed to get himself killed afterwards, then resurrected as a zombie for the other team.
Well, technically his contract with Orkplosion did end with his death, Kratos, so legally he was perfectly within his right to immediately play for the other team.
It seems in bad taste is all I'm saying.
Speaking of which, our next match saw a bunch of half-naked Amazon chicks face off against a squad of 8-foot-tall ogres and a swarm of disgusting little snotling runt nobblers. I don't have a problem with them, they just gross me out.
This one was lacking a little in the blood, but the Blue Panthers went on to score 2 touchdowns in the second half, satisfying the football part of the game.
And satisfying a few other parts of anyone watching? Am I right, fellas? Man, those girls like to grunt.
I'm not surprised there was grunting, given the size of those ogre fists.
You said it, not me, buddy.
Moving on to the next matchup between the necromantic fangs for the memories, and what I can only describe as a herd of chaos beastmen in the form of the horny goats. We saw some good old-fashioned crunching, along with some touchdowns for good measure.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that the Chaos team managed to do so much damage when their opponents are like already dead, or whatever. I'm not a doctor. Although I could be if I spent the weekend on it, which I won't. Because fuck you, Dad.
Right. Well, it looks like our necro team could use a doctor, or an extra necromancer if things are going to continue this way.
Well, I don't know about that one, Kratos. Their current necromancer, which I guess is some kind of colloquial term for bullshit homeopath, seems to be doing a good job keeping their quote-unquote dead players ticking along. Or perhaps those werewolves actually have some very interesting regenerative properties. What would I know, though? I only got a PhD in supernatural physiology at age 7.
Still an impressive score for the horny goats. And quite the record of violence. 68 blocks in one match.
Yeah, sure. But can we talk about the Necro's coach for a second? I mean, what's up with all the zombies trying to dodge like they're frickin' wood elves or some shit? This isn't Star Trek, honey. You can't just beam yourself out of a bad situation. They're dead. Just throw them into something. But what do I know? I mean, I don't spend all my day watching YouTube videos about shitty video games based on board games.
I'm sure all the coaches are doing their best, Rick. And if they don't pull it off, I'm sure the fans will literally eat them alive at the end of the season.
Anyway, so which former dropout turned gym class brown-noser do we have up next?
Our second Amazon team, the Dorothys, squared up against
a dark elf team called Pointy Ears Derogatory. Oh, original.
Well, what they may lack in originality, they made up for in performance this week, managing to keep the blocky Amazonians off the touchdown line for the first half, before running into themselves in the following half. Not without a share of bone-breaking injuries, much to the fans' delight.
Do you think the fans really enjoy all those pasty-skinned midriffs? I mean, I'm not one to judge displays of exposed flesh, hinting at the frothing sexuality beneath the layers of skin-tight leather, fishnet stockings, and PVC. But you know, Goth Hot Topic is such a 90s vibe.
I think so long as the team continue to bring in the wins and inflict heavy casualties, the fans won't mind whichever body parts they choose to expose to the harsh sunlight of Lustria.
Maybe they should take some tips from the Dorothy chicks about the application of bronzer, or at least spend a few hours by the pool. You know what I mean?
If the pointy ears are to take anything from their opponents this match, it should be their pride, their aggressive tactics, and their heads.
The only head I'd be looking for after this match is some from that kinky little witch elf, though I suspect the other 10 pointy-eared subs in the team might take offense to that, if they aren't too busy pouring baby powder over themselves to fit into those pants, that is.
Since we are on the topic of exposed human flesh, how do you feel about our next team, Rick? Apparently the Knuckle Doctors don't subscribe to the notion of safety padding.
Since you bring it up, Kratos, I actually saw this entire team in action a few months ago when they were still working strip poles at the Grizzled Bear Club in Norska. I was just in there to heat up, from the blizzard, of course.
Of course. So you can speak for the strength, tenacity, and brutishness of the team, as was on display at this week's match.
Oh yeah, they are definitely packing a lot of meat, heat, and ready to deliver it to your face one after the other repeatedly, for better or worse.
And you don't think this aggressive approach will hurt them in the long run, considering their reluctance to don armor, even against a larger opponent?
Size isn't everything, my friend, and when there's nearly a dozen dudes channeling high levels of Viking testosterone right at you, well, I just hope Knuffle heard your prayers that morning.
Quite. And the record this match spoke to just how threatening such a well-oiled machine can be on the pitch. With 73 successful blocks, they put even the horny goats to shame.
Yeah, I think we can expect a lot more hurt from these guys, at least until someone brings up their daddy issues pre-game.
And what did you think of their opponents? The Chasm Crushers.
It would be easy to think the Knuckle Doctors had all the cards in this one, seeing as they crushed the opposition and all. But let's not forget that the Chaos Minotaur Meat Grinder was the only player to actually cause a fatality. Call me old-fashioned, Kratos, but I want to see a little more murder in my game.
Yes, the Chaos team held out quite well in the latter half, despite their injuries and persistent opponents. Well, we've only one match left to look over, and that's this week's punch-up, if you can even call it that, between the Asrai War Dancers and the
totally not alien frogmen? Yeah, like that's neither obvious nor a terrible attempt at dad humor. I mean, if you're gonna abduct a troupe of Kislev circus performers, genetically manipulate your physical form to hide the fact you're actually a magical psychic race of alien space frogs, at least make an attempt at subtlety.
Or an attempt at bulking your physique for all the muscle on display. I do not see the strength represented on the injury table. One should be able to at least wound a puny team of woodland sprites.
Well, in fairness to the Slan, I mean Kislev team, they did kill one, but one's never enough when it comes to putting down snooty tree elves, am I right?
A rather pathetic kill at that. The catcher practically committed suicide.
A sad, lonely cry for help.
I suppose the wood elves made an attempt at retribution, however. And that's something to be applauded, even if they'd prefer to throw the ball and score to killing some opponents.
I mean, not everyone's built for the rigors of the physicality of the game there, Kratos. I'm sure if, I don't know, your mommy had been a forest fairy instead of a Spartan badass, you'd be less inclined to go around slaughtering Greek deities in your spare time. Not that it's an excuse, of course, what with us all being the determining factor of our own decisions. Can't blame it all on your parents, kids. Get off your ass and study unless you want Papa to give you shit when he's on his deathbed. Asshole that he was.
Maybe we can save it for the therapist there, Rick. Anyway, how are you feeling about the competition now we've seen what's on display?
Well, looking at the leaderboard, I can confidently declare that half the teams are complete losers. Other than that, who gives a shit? I've done my time today.
Right, well, we'll be back next week, sports fans, with more analysis, highlights, and most importantly, violence. See you next time.